Um, you are all muted right now. I ask you to stay muted until the end of the program when we'll have a question and answer period. If you do have questions that come up while I'm speaking, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll get to those first at the end of the program. And then there'll definitely be a time for you to ask questions and unmute yourself, probably around 7:30 or 7:45. I think that is it for my introduction. My name is Lisa Murray. I'm the director here at the Bass Harbor Memorial Library. I've been a librarian on the island for over 15 years. I moved to MDI about 23 years ago, and my husband and I have two sons who are age 16 and 19. I grew up in Massachusetts and into a family who loved to travel. And over the past 10 years, we've sort of revived that tradition with, really inspired by my father, of traveling with extended family. In the past, we've been to Aruba in Ireland and Quebec and Asheville, North Carolina. And this program will be about our 2019 trip to the Azores. And I think everybody who was on that trip is here right now too. So hopefully they will chime in at the end if they have any questions or they want to add anything. So like I said, every couple of years, here we go, hold on. Hold on for a second, I'm having a little technical problem. Here we go. Every couple of years, my father, my aunt, my sister, her family, her husband Dan and their daughter Tallulah, my family, my husband Dave and our two sons Sean and Jacob, have been planning a week-long trip. Like I said, we did go to Aruba and we've been to Ireland, but this is a crew of many varied interests and many different ages. And so when we were planning this trip, we really wanted to find a place that would appeal to everybody, from Tallulah, who was 8 at the time, to everybody else who was a lot older. So we had hikers and people who like museums, and we all love good food and culture. And we had tossed around the idea of going to a couple of different places from Northern Ireland to Scotland. But when we started talking to people and everyone said, you have to go to the Azores, it's really Ireland meets Iceland. Ireland meets Hawaii, well, and Iceland a little bit too. We were really hooked. And we also wanted something a little spectacular to celebrate my 50th birthday and my son's graduation from high school. So it was really a no-brainer that we decided to go here. It was also extremely attractive because it's only a 5-hour flight from Boston, a direct flight. The Azores are about 850 miles off of the coast of Portugal, and there are 9 islands. We chose to go to São Miguel because it's the largest, it's the capital, and it had a real variety of mountains and ocean and hot springs, and it just a lot to offer, from natural beauty to a more bustling city atmosphere. It also had, we liked the idea that it had a lack of a party culture. It's really quiet there. It's not overly touristed at all. In fact, they have quite a nice a cap on the tourist beds, and I think they capped it at 20,000. And at this point, I think there's only 12,000 rooms available. So it's really not overly touristed. They started some direct flights from New York and Boston, and people really started going. In fact, when we were talking about going, we asked people, and the only people who I had met who had ever gone were either transatlantic sailors or had been in the military or were going there to visit family, because there's a real strong connection between the Azores and the East Coast. Of the 1.5 million Portuguese who are in the US, nearly 300,000 of them are in Massachusetts, mostly in the Fall River area. They're famous for their cheese, for their wine, and their tropical fruit, and increasingly for tourism. So São Miguel is the most volcanically active of all of the Azores Islands. There are three major volcanoes, the Fogo, Sete Ciudad, and Furnas. Please excuse my Portuguese accent, by the way. And these are all they all have large calderas and lakes in the middle of them that are quite spectacular. If you've seen any photos of the Azores, you've probably seen some of those photographs. It's been many, many years. I think it's been 500 years since there have been eruptions there, but it's quite active, as you'll see from some of the pictures. We stayed in Villafranca do Campo. It was originally founded in the 1500s as the administrative seat. There was a devastating earthquake and landslides which leveled the city, in which they moved the capital to São Miguel, which is more to the west. It's about 11,000 people in this area, not so much in the city, but spread out. And economically, it's cattle, fishing, and increasingly agriculture. Villafranca has, I think, over 500 pineapple greenhouses and a large banana farming industry, which you'll see pictures of. So, when we arrived, we were in the midst of the celebration of St. John, which lasted 15 days, and there were here's some pictures of the buildings there. There were parades, and there were bands and fireworks and cannons going off from about 10 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning. So that ended, I think, the second night we were there. So it was a little shocking to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to cannons going off. This is just an example of the real traditional architecture there. And this is one of the waterfront beaches at Villafranca. This is an example of some of the fishing boats. The seafood there was incredible, and the evidence of that seafaring tradition was everywhere. I had to put this picture in. I'm actually not sure what these were catching. Looking at it from a lobster trap perspective, it must have been something large, maybe crabs, I'm not really sure. This was an altar to sailors lost at sea. And something that you see all over the Azores are these beautiful ceramic signs everywhere that are painted. And this was just a sign for a historic building, but most of the street signs are painted like this as well. And they're everywhere. So we rented an Airbnb called Villa Miramar. It was built in the 18th century. I'm sorry, it was built in the 20th century by wealthy people who lived in Ponta Delgada as their country home. And it's quite obvious that it was built to resemble a very fancy English home. We think they were Anglophiles, and you'll see the interior. There are some pretty interesting decorations in here. It was a huge, beautiful house, high ceilings, 3 stories. It's a very European kitchen and beautiful woodwork. So one of the things that we found hysterical was that Gene Forbes will appreciate this, there were paintings of flowers and pottery, but then they had the actual pottery that they were painting on a shelf underneath it. The house is surrounded by, I believe they were cinder cones of the volcanoes all around. You can see here, I wish I had a pointer actually here, but you can see the hills surrounding it. You can also see the white buildings behind the house are pineapple greenhouses, and then all around surrounding the house are banana fields. You can also see way up on top of the hill on the right is a chapel, which is the Hermitage of Nossa Senhora da Paz, which means the Hermitage of Our Lady of Peace. This was built in the 18th century on the location of a 16th century building where supposedly a shepherd saw an image of the Virgin Mary. And the defining characteristic here are the 100 steps that lead up to the chapel and the really intricate ceramic tiles representing the 5 joyful and 5 sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary. This is the view. And again, I wish I had a pointer, but way down to the sort of in the center to the left, you can see our house. But you can also see all of the pineapple greenhouses and all of those fields of bananas there. Out in the ocean to the right is the Villa Franca Islet, which is coming up next. You can also see the port down there. So here are just some close-ups of the ceramic tiles. They were just gorgeous. And everywhere in the Azores are the blue hydrangeas. I mean, these are white ones here, but they're everywhere. You'll see them in almost all of my pictures. Another feature of this was the intricate stonework. There were round cobbles and then inlaid white stone. This was of the Rosary. But everywhere in the Azores, they did this. You'll see in my pictures of Ponta Delgada, the crosswalks and the sidewalks had this. And this is all volcanic stone. So the Villa Franca Islet is a 12-acre nature preserve. The interior is a sunken caldera of a volcano, and the center of it it's about 60 feet deep, and it's a public beach, and they limit the amount of bathers who are allowed to go out there. You have to register on a boat, and I think they limit it to about 400 people. We didn't go out there. The temperatures when we went in June were in the low 70s, and we would have some sunny days and some cloudy days, but it was just not quite hot enough to want to swim in the ocean. And this was a real um, a, a waypoint for us, because anytime we were driving, when we could see it rising up out of the ocean, so we knew we were getting close to our exit. And this is a great picture. You can really see the rolling, the cinder hills of the small that are there that were surrounding the volcanoes. It had a real, it resembled Ireland so much with the rolling green hills. And there's another picture of it. It's quite impressive. These were bathing houses along the shore. Some of us swam in the ocean. My niece, 8-year-old niece, had no problem swimming, and my older son did as well, but I didn't. They also do cliff diving off of the island, and right before we had come, I think the day before, they had the Red Bull Cliff Diving Championships on that tall piece there. They put up a diving board, and it's pretty high up there. So I've broken this program up by location. There's just so much to talk about. I just felt like this was the best way to do it. So the south side of the island is where we stayed. In here, there's a lot of cattle, a lot of cows everywhere, with these beautiful rolling green hills and wonderful soil because it was all volcanic. The Lagoa de Congro is one of the volcanic lakes. Again, it was in a sunken caldera of a volcano. And it was this beautiful emerald green. There was about a 1.5 mile hike down in there. They had carp living in there. There were hiking trails all through here. And it was a hot lake. It was definitely warm. You can't swim in it, but you can definitely feel, it wasn't boiling hot, but it was very warm. This is some pictures of the walk over there. There's, I believe those are some kind of hydrangea there. And there are, these I believe are Japanese cedars that were imported. And you'll see a mix of, all through the Azores, a mix of imported trees and bushes and flowers, but then there are some of the native species as well. Our favorite place was Furnash. Furnash is in the Furnash Valley, which is a huge volcanic caldera. It has the most volcanic activity on the island, and you can see in that top right picture the edge of how deep we are down in there. The picture on the left is a washing spot people had used, and I believe Furnash was settled in the 1500s. It's a very old town. In the 18th century, it became really popular for the hot springs and the mineral baths there, and a lot of that activity is still going on. Our favorite place for baked goods is the Bolos Levados there. We bought bags and bags of these wonderful bolos there. The Parque Terra Nostra is a 24-acre romantic style botanical garden. It also has large public mineral bathing pools. This one is very iron rich, and they're very hot. And locals are there with their families, and tourists are there. And I think it wasn't very expensive, €8 or something. It's It has a large selection of native and imported plants. Here is one of the more private bathing areas. We really like the hot springs. This is my son and I walking through some of the giant, I guess these are palms. The Lagoa das Furnas is a very similar to Yellowstone, with bubbling lakes and mud, and it's quite dramatic. And if I can get this to work, I have a small video. But the real reason to come to this place is the traditional stew called cozido. Many of the restaurants in Furnas make this, and it is a stew typically consisting of carrots and taro, pig's ears, pork belly, chicken, blood sausage, cabbage. It's quite a stew. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, the people will come in and place the pot of this stew into a concrete cylinder, bury it, and put on the lid. And then at 6 hours later, they'll come back, and all the restaurants will bring their stew back to the restaurant. It's sort of the Azorean lobster bake, really. The Praia do Fogo it looked like Greece. You wind down these crooked, winding roads through the mountains down to this beautiful black sand beach, which actually had a hot spring in the ocean at the water's edge. You could kind of feel it. It wasn't dramatic enough to really notice it, but it was this beautiful hidden little spot, and it had a great beach bar, which I'll talk more about, which was just a great place for lunch. And it had white houses all along the hills going down, and it looked so European. You could have been in Italy or Greece. Ponta Delgada is the capital. These are the gates to the city. And you'll also see in front of that real intricate stonework with the volcanic rock and the white stone. The designs everywhere walking along the city were incredible. It's a real walkable city, very safe, with open markets and museums. It's the economic capital of the island. There's a big marinas. There's a huge sailing community there. And large shipping. Even now, because it's pretty much in the middle of the Atlantic, it's a stop for cruise ships and big ships to refuel. Here are a couple of more pictures of that stonework in some of the older buildings. There was a lot of art too. There were murals everywhere. We didn't spend a lot of time in the West. Mosteros, again, this is real dramatic cliffs, rolling green hills. We came here actually in search of this place, which was a hot spring in the ocean that, depending on the tide when you go, is really, really hot or bearable. But those ropes exist there to keep you from being sucked out to sea. So, well, it looked appealing. We didn't quite make it there, but this is a picture I found off the internet, but it looked like something we would have really enjoyed. Again, here's a picture of the black sand beaches and the formations off the coast. So most of the pictures you see of the Azores are of this area here. Set Ciudad is another volcano. These are the Twin Lakes. Excuse me. The Azul and Lagoa Azul and Lagoa Verde. They're connected. They flow into one another, but they have a causeway separating them. And they're ecologically different, which is why they have two different colors, although the legend is that a shepherd fell in love with a princess and they couldn't be together. So the lakes are their tears, and the blue are the princess's eyes, and the green are from the green-eyed shepherd. So this is what it looks like on a sunny day. You can really, I mean, you can again see how deep that is. We are certainly in the center of a volcano here. So when we went, it was overcast and it looked like this. You can see it a little bit, the differentiation in color here. There are hiking trails all around here. It's not as heavily settled. It seemed like there are a lot of country homes here. And we did find the way to get this wonderful view, however, perched on a hillside overlooking this was the Mont Palace Hotel, which was an abandoned structure. I think it was built in the 80s. And the owner went bankrupt and they just abandoned it, and they allow anybody to climb up inside of it. And it's quite dramatic. This is one of the terraces. It's covered in graffiti. Some of it is unbelievably artistic, but it was pretty fun to explore. Here's another video that will give you some perspective here. So here it is from the outside. It's a little foreboding, but we all went in it. I don't think my father went in it, but we had a really great time exploring. We were very careful about where we stepped. Here's my sister and my niece. And there's a close-up of that really intricate graffiti. And there's my son Jacob on the roof. As you can see, there's low clouds. When you get up that high, and I was trying to look at, I think we're about 866 feet up here. And there's a lot of clouds and low-hanging fog everywhere you go. The Lagoa del Fogo is the Lake of Fire, which is also in that same volcano system. This has a lot of hiking trails down here. You can't swim the lake, unfortunately. But again, you can see that low hanging fog. And I believe that one is a lot higher, actually. Yeah, this is at 1,900 feet. We sought out a lot of hot springs, obviously. The Caldera, I'm sorry. The Caldera Velha Park is a nature preserve with an interpretive center, but they also have a wonderful system of hot springs, which if you go to the top one, which is the one on the left there, you have a hot waterfall, and as you go farther down in the valley, the hot tubs are cooler and cooler. So depending on how you're feeling that day, you'll choose which one to go in. So you can see a lot of the foliage here. There are giant palms and ferns, not to mention azalea and eucalyptus and many different kinds of trees here. So one of the traditions that my husband and my older son have, whenever we've gone on any of these trips, they try to hike the highest point. And in Aruba, it was pretty easy, but here they were joined by my brother-in-law, Dan, and they hiked the Pico de Vara, which is the highest point, and it is 3,600 feet. It's part of a nature reserve, and part of what that reserve is protecting is the Laura Silva forest, which is old European forest, which is pretty much all gone. It's 15 million year old forest, and they are, I'm just trying to think of, give you some of the names of the plants that are in there. These are Japanese cedars right here, but there's giant laurels, fennels, mosses, ferns, hollies, and they even have an Azorean blueberry. So here they are hiking up the peak. It's about 4.5 miles and 3,600 feet. Again, bathed in fog. There was a plane crash, and this was a memorial. You can see the mountains all around here. Riviera Funda is in the north, and it's where there are a lot of hiking trails up there. It's quite dramatic, the dramatic cliffs. You can see the hiking sign right there on the right. Hiking didn't seem to be very popular there, except in the Set Ciudades area. When we were hiking, we didn't see anybody else on the trails, at least in this part. I don't know if they saw other people when they hiked the mountain, however. There's a view looking north, I believe. So in this particular hike, we went down to see some old water mills that I believe they were for grinding flour. And again, here you can see that blue hydrangea again. This was pretty neat. There were aqueducts all around from one building to another along the river. The Praia de Vitoria is a real, we weren't there for very long, but my impression was a real working class, small city, primarily fishing based, in home of one of our favorite restaurants, which is O Pescador. There's a large air base there as well, and a big yachting city as well. And so when you go to A Pescador, this is a pretty typical plate you would get at any of the restaurants. Those are giant barnacles on the left, called cracas, which some of us liked and some of us weren't very fond of. When you ordered any sort of seafood, you would get it a whole fish like that, a lot of starch, a little bit of vegetables, but the seafood was incredible. Again, that's a big steak fish of some sort. And I believe this was at a beach bar. And these are just giant shrimp. So we loved beach bars. They were at every beach. For very little money, you could get everything from a hamburger and a hot dog, or a really, really good sandwich on bolos, to fresh seafood. And there was no drinking age, so my 18-year-old son was excited he could have a beer with everybody else. So something else we really loved there were these food carts. They were ubiquitous. They were in the oddest spots. We went to the environmental park, one of the botanical gardens, and there was one right at the entrance. It would be like one of these at the entrance to Acadia National Park, and you could get a shot of espresso, you could get a shot of liquor, you could get an ice cream, you could get a fresh baked goods. And these places saved us so many times. The one on the left here is on a pull-out, a scenic vista, and you would be so tired from your hike, and you could just stumble out of the trail, and there was this cart, and you could have your shot of really good espresso and go on with your day. We love bolos. They are giant, slightly sweet English muffins that are perfect for breakfast. They're perfect for sandwiches. I think we used them as hamburger buns once. We made egg sandwiches with them. They're so good. And I think my father found a place in Fall River, I think they were in his local grocery store down in Massachusetts recently. But I've made these since, and they just aren't the same. But we ate many, many of these. So these photos are actually taken from the local grocery store supermarket, and bacalhau is the salt cod. I don't think we made any of it at home, but I think some of us had it at restaurants. And there's just fresh seafood everywhere, from shrimp, shellfish, fish, anything you could want. This is a farmer's market in Ponta Delgada. And I believe that's a giant squash, and those are eel. In doing research on the native animals, we discovered that the only native animal on the Azores that is still there is a bat. And it was quite obvious when we were hiking. There were no chipmunks, there weren't any squirrels, there were lots of birds, but nothing exotic. I think there's an endangered bullfinch that's there, but it was a lot of small songbirds, mostly. We did see a lot of bats. I don't know if they were the ones that were the native species, but we saw a lot of cows. Here you can see some of the hydrangea hedgerows lining the street. There's another picture of that. You can barely see the sign on the right. Again, here's another type of hydrangea, I believe. You also see a lot of the introduced species. At these botanical gardens, they have everything. Here's another picture of some of the, I believe these are giant ferns. Because of the fog, everything's really lush and things can grow that you wouldn't think would grow there. It really felt like you were walking, a dinosaur was going to come around the corner half the time. This is a large pond of taro growing in Furnash, and I'm assuming it's grown for the restaurants for use in the cozida stews. Well, there aren't a lot of native land mammals. There are it's really the sea life that's spectacular around here. Each of the islands have their own flavor of sea life. In some of the smaller islands, there are whale sharks. It's one of the only places in the world where they breed giant manta rays, many species of whales, and many species of dolphin. We took a boat ride and out to try to find some dolphins and whales, and we found, because of the Gulf Stream here, the waters are really rich, and of course the little fish like to eat that, and then of course the dolphins and the other animals like to eat the little fish, and so this is a large school of dolphin herding a ball of little tiny fish up from the bottom and having a food festival with shearwaters getting involved too. They were all around us.
Our skipper is now using the hydrophone. Here they are vocalizing. So normally when they are feeding, location. And the whistles, you can hear the whistles. So did you know these dolphins, they can recognize?
We also saw several sea turtles too, and we got to see a mother and calf sperm whale.
Oh, no.
Oh, here we go.
And I guess there are blue whales as well, and orcas. So we had a fabulous time, and I felt like we did a lot, but there were lots of areas we just scratched the surface. My father and my sister's family had planned on going back last year and staying in Furnash, I believe. In which there's so much to do in that area. I would probably do that again. The oldest part of the island is the east side that has the oldest rock, which we didn't even really get to. But it was easy to access. It was not over touristed. It was easy to get around with my little bit of Spanish. And most people did speak English, or would understand, we worked it out. It wasn't overly expensive, and it was just gorgeous. So I am going to open it up for questions. And I believe you can unmute yourself. Hold on, let me just see if I can do this. Okay, you should be available. You should be able to unmute yourself now if you have any questions. I'm going to see if there's anything in the chat.
Yeah, I unmuted.
And so if anybody who went on this trip with me wanted to add anything, please do.
Nice job, Lisa. Beautiful
So,
scenery.
Lisa, did you guys stay at the one?
Did we say where?
Did you guys stay at the one house and just travel everywhere on that island, or did you stay in different places?
We stayed in that one house. So the island is really small. It's only 50 miles long and 10 miles wide, which was one of the reasons we rented I think we rented 2 cars. So it was really easy to just zip across the island to go to the north side. There's not I don't think there's many Airbnbs there. I mean, when we were researching, I think there might be only 300 or something. So yeah, we did stay in that one. And I do have a question here from Emily Prudhomme, who asked me about communicating. Like I said, everything's in Portuguese, obviously. Having my basic Spanish knowledge, it was really easy for me to understand the signs and to read what things were. But once I spoke, it was really hard. I mean, I think I could get my point across, but I couldn't. It was really challenging to understand what people were saying.
They're very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Portuguese is how it looks and how it's heard is very different. But everybody was very friendly. I mean, people were willing to share and communicate, and I don't think we had any problems at all.
That's great.
Hey, Lisa,
Yes?
this is Auntie Emily. I just wanted to mention that when the owners of the house came to our house and showed us around, they said we were so lucky that they'd had rain for like 2 weeks or something. And we were really fortunate that I don't think we had a rainy day.
No,
so there was
we did.
fog, but it's a pretty rainy place, and we were really fortunate to get those nice pictures and not have soaking rains all the time.
Yeah, and the weather was really great. My husband keeps pointing out how great it was that it was 72 degrees all the time, because you could walk around in these cities on a sunny day and just not bake to death. It was and hiking was fabulous. I was actually surprised that there wasn't more of a hiking culture there. But maybe we just weren't on the trails that people did. I think it would be wonderful to do more hiking there, actually. And my father actually wanted to point out that there were no indigenous people there, that Europeans actually were the first people there.
And did you fly right onto that island?
Yeah, we flew direct from Boston. It was 5 hours. It was really nice. I mean, we had jet lag, obviously, but it was.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It was Boston to the Azores, and I think in the past 5 years, they started those direct flights, which has made it a lot more popular. But the government really has great foresight in realizing that they really are worried about it becoming another Iceland, and so they put real restrictions on the tourist beds allowed, and I think they're certified as for sustainable tourism too, as one of the leaders in it, and it's really obvious.
So I was wondering, I'm sure the seasons don't change much. Maybe they have a rainy season like Hawaii does, but it's pretty temperate. But I was wondering if maybe the hiking, if it was just sort of off season for it.
Yeah, it may have been. I'm not really sure.
I mean, you'd
I
think
don't
June would
know.
be a great time to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know what the, I mean, we went there in mid-June. So I don't know, yeah, if they have great variety in their seasons or their temperatures.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah, it didn't rain much at all.
like here, you're bound to not see very many people on the trails in October, but you can't even get to the trails in August. So it's nothing like that. I mean, they don't have that swell of a tourist season and then all quiet.
Yeah.
You'd think there would be more hiking.
Yeah, it would be wonderful. Backpacking, really.
So
Lisa,
Yeah.
were you able to eat any of that fresh pineapple and banana?
We did actually. When we first arrived at the house, my niece was just so excited and wanted to look through all the banana plantation in the back, and there were some fellows who were working there, and they gave us a big, I don't know what they're called, a bunch of bananas, and
Heads.
she was pretty excited to have that. So we did eat a lot of that. I actually don't remember seeing pineapple anywhere. I mean, it may have been some in the store, but yeah, I don't know if we had pineapple.
All for export.
Yeah, it might be. Might be.
Who did the driving?
Oh, who did the driving? I don't know. I think my father did a lot of the driving. Dave and I both did some of the driving. And I don't think were we on the left side of the road? I can't remember actually.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, does anybody remember? I think we were on the right side of the road. No, actually, I think we were on the left side. I honestly don't remember.
No accidents, that's what counts.
No, there weren't any accidents. No.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were a lot of roads too. And there were, everything from pretty modern sort of highways that bisected the island from north to south to dirt roads that were quite well maintained. It really felt, I mean, it for where it was, I mean, it was odd because culturally it felt very much like a Latin American culture. I mean, there was everything shut down in the middle of the day and everybody had a sort of a siesta, although I don't think they called it that. But but to look around you, it was clearly not that. I mean, the volcanic aspect of this island is obvious everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So it was jarring sometimes because you'd be having your very European coffee and scone, and then there'd be, black volcanic rock everywhere and hot springs and bubbling lakes.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It was very, very, very informative.
Yeah. So are there any more questions?
yeah, I was just curious, like as a destination, would you say it's a fairly affordable vacation? I mean, Airbnb, that's the way to go instead of a nightly rate for a hotel. And
Yeah,
it wasn't expensive.
it's euros.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say things weren't cheap. I mean, I can't remember how much our house was. I think it was maybe around $300 a night. but considering, I mean, it was as 3-story, I think there were 1, 2, 3, 6 or 7 bedrooms. I mean, that's
Exactly.
not bad.
Imagine, getting hotel rooms for,
Yeah.
most of those are at least 200 a night.
Yeah.
For one room, no kitchen. A house is a way to go. I'm
Yeah,
convinced.
the house is the way to go. I would highly recommend it. It was really nice. We did do a lot of our own cooking, which is always fun when you're in a completely different country because, you go to the grocery store and you don't know what you're buying. And so you never know what you'll get. So we did a lot of our own cooking. So we didn't have to eat out all the time. We probably ate out most evenings, not every evening. And again, but the beach bars were so cheap. I mean, and even the restaurants, I mean, that at that O Pescador, I think, for our main meal and dessert and wine, it ended up being 30 euros? No, $30 each or something. It wasn't that bad. But the beach bars were cheap. I mean, they were,
Yeah.
and
they look so fun, like probably anything you would want.
Mm-hmm.
Enough variety for the whole crew. Right. And then not expensive and just like, so great to have that water all around you and then just whatever kind of, I mean, it must feel really posh.
Yeah, it does. You do. There are moments when you do feel very posh because you're sipping your wine by the black sand beach and
I can't get over that black sand. I mean, just the different geographical stuff around the world just floors me. Black sand.
Yeah.
It
was hot, I'll tell you that. It was,
I bet.
The day we went to the Praia do Fogo, no, I can't remember the name of it now, the black sand beach that had the hot spring in it. It was actually probably the hottest day, and that sand was hot.
Yeah.
So we were kind of glad that we didn't find the hot part of the hot spring beach there.
Yeah.
But we were so struck by how much it looked like Greece.
Right. Yeah, but I can see why too. You say Hawaii meets Ireland. I mean, it has that real Hawaiian feel, and just the way it's kind of in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. But then the hills look really Irish. But I love how since the volcano crater or whatever you call it is so round.
Yeah.
That also floors me to think that something almost perfectly round is like a natural geographic occurrence. Here everything is so irregular, asymmetrical and everything else. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I love that picture. I mean, it was a stock photo of the islet, but I love that just perfect circle.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. If there aren't are there any other questions?
Thank you so much.
I do want to remind everybody to sign up. I have the sign up sheets on the sign up link on the website for Judy Taylor's program next month. And I thank you all for joining. And it was good to see you again. And I hope to see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.